Welcome back to Pinstripe Pulse. The Yankees flatline in Houston. We're actually going to talk about it in this one with our 2022 postseason recap. And let's get right into it. Let's not waste any time. Thanks for coming back. So then we get into the fun stuff. Judge had a crazy, impactful year. We go in as the 2 seed. We're playing the Guardians in the postseason. And we were at game 1. And Jake, what were your feelings at game 1 of that ALDS?
Honestly, perfectly executed game from everything that I remember. Not a ton of offense. Bader hits a home run, I believe, right?
Yep, Bader bomb.
Yeah.
His first.
And then Rizzo hits a home run too.
Yep.
Really not a lot of offense whatsoever, but they get them and they get those runs at the right times. So they
Donaldson thought he did.
What was it, 3-1 or 4-1? 4-1 was the final, but Cole just looked fantastic. He looked great the entire offseason. I know he ran into trouble with that Astros game, but I can't fully blame that on him. He was coming off a short rest. But man, you get everything you want to out of your pitching staff and then out of the bats that you get. And Bader did fortify himself as a legitimate postseason threat right then and there.
And this is why you pay your good players.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the Yankees, and look at my wall, I'm a middle class man. As a kid, my parents spent a lot of money on the Yankees. A lot of people watch the Yankees. They get a lot of money. If you're going to be a big market team like the Yankees, you go out and get Garrett Cole. And Garrett Cole was a gamer. He was the reason we won 3 games this postseason. He was the reason we won 2 of them. And that's all you can ask for from your ace. And honestly, he was in, like you alluded to, Houston. That game 1 was special, man. I had good feelings, perfectly executed game. Obviously, we're playing a Guardians team that are kind of quiet with the bats. And you can see how it came through. We had that weird after the rain out game in game 2, after mid-afternoon Friday game, I think, for game 2 we dropped. But then we go back to Cleveland. We're looking at that game 3, and I'm feeling pretty good going up, 6-5 in the ninth.
Mm-hmm. And then everything goes wrong. Fuck, man. I mean, Clark Schmidt should have never been in that situation. I think that's what a lot of that comes down to. I feel like we all, there was no one out there that had absolute utter confidence in the Yankees bullpen to get it done, but especially not Clark Schmidt. No offense to him, he's a great pitcher, but he's not been battle tested like that. They haven't given him that many opportunities in those high leverage situations. So it's what are you doing? Go to someone that you actually trust there.
And that was the thing. I would disagree with the assessment that Clark Schmidt should be there.
Yeah.
But if they were doing that in August and September, really high leverage with Clark Schmidt, even when we were at our worst with all the bullpen injuries, Clark Schmidt wasn't in those situations. You're going to bring him to, and I've been to Cleveland, man. Those Cleveland sports fans, Yankee Stadium when it's loud is a different kind of loud. Mm-hmm. But Cleveland, that's a hard environment, and those fans are going crazy. And they have the top of their lineup up. They have ducks on the pond. They have Mercado, who has been a revelation for them all year. Coming up, he went through J-Ram. You put Clark in that situation, you're setting him up for failure. It almost seems condescending to say that Clark can't do it. He's a pro pitcher. He has really good stuff. He should be able to do it, but back to, the Yankees are not putting their pitchers in a lane to succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating because we felt the same way about game 1 of the ALCS. I don't think they expected. We can finish this series, but in short, they didn't expect to win that game, or they didn't even expect to be in a position to have a chance to win that game. Yet they still kind of go to the same arms for that they typically would go low leverage for high leverage, and that just doesn't work out because these guys need to have they need to pitchers are very meticulous, and some of them are really good at adjusting on the fly. Like Wandy's one of those guys. Like he'll pitch every day if he needs to, and he proved that. But someone like Schmidt, I feel like he's bounced so much between being a starter and now a reliever that it's like he has a specific routine that he needs to follow. And when you take him out of that, he's out of his environment and he's out of his element, and like that just shows immediately. Like he doesn't have the right body language to be in that situation right now.
And Clay Holmes we spoke about down the stretch was rough, but that was where the really bad quote came after, where we're talking, was Clay Holmes available to come in there? And Boone said, in an emergency. And I understand in theory. I get the thinking. It doesn't make sense. But this game three after the rain out, it put game 2, 3, 4, and 5 all back to back days. I think. And game 5, we were there. We ended up getting rained out, and there was an off day.
Yep.
But so I get your bullpen being thin, and thinking about that in game 3, you can't make a bullpen decision with a lead. With a tie game, okay, maybe I don't love it. Like I said, you go for the game you have. Yankees had the lead. Yankees were 1 strike away, and they tried to steal a game.
Yeah.
They tried to steal a game with one of the back of their bullpen guys against a really good hitter in Mercado, and just a really bad situation. And they're trying to get too cute, and instead of just putting their foot on the neck of the Guardians and taking that. And then you have Garrett Cole the next day. You take that game 3, you put your best pitcher out there, Cole versus, I think it was Quantrill again. And you take that series in 4.
And they could have saved all that rest for the starting pitching,
Yeah, the best way to rest your starting pitcher and your relief pitchers is to win the series in fewer games while you have the opportunity to.
Like the video of Cole during the celebration after game 5, where they asked him how are you feeling? He was like, I'm just glad I'm able to rest a little bit, or something along those lines. I forgot the exact wording, but he just looked like a zombie after that game, and he was well aware that they would have to get on a plane and then go to Houston and play an even tougher game right away. So they never really got that chance to rest, and they kind of did that to themselves. That was self-inflicted.
Yeah, because you have that, they win game 4 behind Cole. And they get game 5. It was a fun game. They jumped out early. The same game 1 and game 5. It was exactly the Yankee script you'd want. And Nestor put in a great performance. Got us a good 5 innings, I think. But it put us in a tough situation for the CS, man. Like that's this playoff format. A lot of people are knocking it. I think both sides of the playoff format really culminated well, because you saw the impact. The Phillies are the 6th seed. They got through. So you saw the parity it offers, but the Astros got the advantage every single round. The Mariners were matched up with a really tough Toronto team. Like they won both games. They grinded it out. But they were tired going to Houston. They got beat up by Houston. Houston had a ton of rest. They could line up Verlander game 1 for the Yankees in the CS. The Guardians were starting, the game 1 in the DS, the Guardians were starting Cal Quantrill, because Bieber and McKenzie went games 1 and 2 in the wild card series. So that set up the Yankees to win, but the Yankees went 5 with Cleveland, so the Astros had lined up. So it worked out well, but the Yankees go in and they're the back foot. Like Jameson Taillon is their ALCS game 1 starter. And it's another game that I thought that we could have had, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you had, for game 1, Bader does his thing again. It's another homer. Offense completely disappeared, which was kind of expected, but at the same time, they were putting good pressure on Verlander, right away. And it just felt like one of those things, if you don't get to them early, you're not going to get to them. And that ended up being the case. And the only thing you could have asked for at that point is for, a decent fight out of Taillon and the pitching staff to hold it down, and that just wasn't possible because of the pitching decisions that they made going through the bullpen.
And between the bullpen decisions and the management with injuries coming back, I mean, we got to Verlander early, And this is where we saw Carpenter for the first time since he went down. And Carpenter, we talked offline about how we need to give Carpenter his love. We didn't really talk about him in that whole recap.
Yeah.
Carpenter was a better hitter than Judge in the time that he played regular season baseball this year.
Dude, he was probably on
And
pace
Judge
for
is the
like
best.
70 home runs.
Yeah, it was nuts. So we bring Carpenter seems available for this Texas series, and I kind of got on the Yankees for not bringing him back in that Texas series. And Cash came out. I forget if it was Cash or Boone came out with a quote that Carpenter requested to go to the alternate site so he can get more live ABs, which I understand because baseball is not a game where games are going to get you your reps. Like you got to get in the cage, you got to get your live looks. You have the minor league guys. I think he went to Scranton, but it's tough. Carpenter came and he didn't look good, and you went through like that middle to bottom of the lineup of Carpenter and Donaldson back to back in that
Black
game,
hole.
putting up really bad at bats.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
You have a pitcher like Justin Verlander, you put him on the ropes for a few innings, but you give him two kind of gimme strikeouts 2-3 times through the order. It gives a lot of momentum, man. And he's too good of a pitcher to get confidence and momentum and to feel his stuff. Against those guys, he can tinker, he can not execute his pitches, and Donaldson and Carpenter weren't putting up competitive looks.
It makes you it's one thing with Carpenter because you could tell that clearly he just simply his timing wasn't back. He wasn't seeing the ball the same. And I'm sure if he had an extra 2 weeks or so, before the season ended at the major league level to figure things out, he probably would have looked at least a little bit better. But when it comes to to Donaldson, it's like, what is your approach here? Like, what are you trying to accomplish at the plate? Because it looked like he was very much in between. Did he want to? He would take very aggressive swings out of the zone, and then he would watch like fastballs and a 2-strike count go right by, straight down the middle. So it's like, what are you looking for here? It felt very much like almost an even worse version of Aaron Hicks's approach, which is not what you want to see out of a guy that is known for being a prolific slugger.
And it's tough, and that's where we mentioned before. Boone and Cashman said that Donaldson isn't, it's not his age that's getting to him. I do think there is merit to just being a bit of a slowdown. Like baseball is such a game of margins, and you can tell he's guessing up there. And his hands used to be elite level, and he has a big, loud lower half in his swing. Like you look at 2015 Donaldson, Toronto and Oakland. Like it's a big giddy up. It's a power guy. He's really driving it. You lose that little bit of quickness that you have. There's a lot going on with the swing, but because he's been an elite hitter his whole life, it makes it work. I think he lost maybe a little bit of strength, a little bit of quickness, and he has to simplify it. And he was just guessing because it got in his head. He wasn't able to get to the same pitches that he's always gotten to. So then he was trying to anticipate a lot, and really, it was hard to know what his approach was because he just seemed lost. It wasn't a consistent approach. I think he felt that he was slow, and that's kind of what I saw in his swing. But it was tough.
Well,
Really
it
tough
makes you kind of wonder what kind of conversations are going on with Dylan Lawson, the hitting coach, and the team. Because you saw a lot of that in the postseason. So many guys were in between. How many strikeouts did they have against the Astros? Like 41, 42 total? This is a guy that preaches hit strikes hard. Like, that is his mantra. That's a good mantra to have.
Yep.
But how many strikes were seen right down the dick that weren't swung at?
Mm-hmm.
That can't happen moving forward. And, you've got a lot of veterans that seem to have changed their approach. And then, also, it sucks when a guy like Judge, who carried you throughout the regular season, he's the reason you're in the playoffs in the first place. This is the first time we really saw him press, where he was swinging at balls. He was chasing outside the zone frequently. So when you see your best doing that, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, and in those dog days of August, man, I mean, Judge kept going and doing his thing. It's harder. In baseball, it's impossible. It's really hard to carry a team. Aaron Judge did it for us for a while against the Astros, who have top to bottom probably the best pitching staff in baseball. put the Dodgers up there, but they're golfing right now. Like the Astros are pretty legit. It's Judge can't do that, like you in the postseason. You see it with the Phillies lineup a bit. Like you need guys to grind out at bats. You need to tack on like every little interaction matters. When we're putting up non-competitive at bats in the middle of the order, it sets up Aaron Judge to put everything on his shoulders. And if there's one guy who I want to take the team who can do it, it is Aaron Judge. But he didn't, and that's he went up against a really good team. I think we give Aaron Judge a 7-game series of a CS, and his numbers look a bit better.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was never. We were never in it.
But
Game 4 was the only game where there was some level of positivity, and even that was only in a vacuum because you'd zoom out and we're the Talking Yanks watch party, and it's windy, cold, late night, and we're still down 3-0 in the series, and it's like, oof.
It felt like we were playing from behind the entire time, but they had something on the colors. I think that the Phillies also have something or had something on the colors too. It's just like the way it's shaping out. Those at bats looked a lot better, like early in the game and that game 4. But they still had plenty of opportunities with guys on base where they could have really put that game away early, and they failed to do so. And that double play ball, I mean, that's what that game comes down to. But that is a microcosm of the entire season. The double play ball that was no longer a double play between IKF and Glaber. Or Glaber and IKF. Should IKF have caught that ball a little bit better and like squared his shoulders up and made sure that he gave a nice target? Yes. Should Glaber have tossed that ball a little bit towards his arm side a little bit more and just made sure that he had an accurate toss on it because he had plenty of time? Yes, but at the end of the day, these are issues that they've dealt with the entirety of the season that were never fully addressed. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, I'm mad that the Yankees didn't win that game, but they deserve to lose that game ultimately, which is the cold reality.
They deserve to lose that game and lose the series. I think, really, Game 1 was the one that I felt they could have gotten. And you steal that game, man, against Verlander. You steal a Tyone game against Verlander, you're lining up, with Sevy, Cole, Nestor.
Yeah, I like our chances there.
That's a new... I like our chances. Going home, I really like our chances. And that's why every game counts. Like, you can't... And it would help, obviously, like we've spoken at nauseum about the bullpen depth and how, how we lost a lot of pivotal arms. Like, you can't try to get cute, you can't try to play your numbers like, okay, if we go this, what's the probability add of each pitcher here? Our back end guys, we have to use them sometime. Yeah. I think, and I'm not inside the Yankees decision making, but it seems like they try to line things up where it's like, oh, I think we can like get through here, as opposed to setting their good guys up to be good at baseball. And like, I'm making it sound really dumb and simple. I understand, like, there's a lot of information that even goes into that, but I think you need to manage on the front foot, and I don't just mean that from Boone. I think that's the whole team, and it felt like we had the opportunity to put our foot on the gas, and we were taking it off and just trying to cruise through.
You have to instill trust in your guys that you've been going to all season at some point or another, and that the failure to do that really is just disappointing, because it's like, I mean, by the end of the playoffs, I had trust in Clay, like, not fully necessarily, but I was like, this guy, like, he's finding his stuff again. He should be going out there. Same thing with Loizaga. Like, both of those guys, by the end of the ALCS, they found their stuff. So you have to be able
Johnny
to...
Loizaga, man.
He's a dog. He's so good.
Such a dog. We have not given him love this whole episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll ride with him into the sunset, man. And a lot of that is a function, like we lost Mike King and Chad Green and Chapman. I don't even want to have a Chapman conversation. We'll talk about that when we do free agents. I don't even if we can go a whole podcast and, well, I mean, now we're mentioning him, but if we can go our podcast and not acknowledge Aroldis Chapman and Pinstripes, I wouldn't be too upset about it.
I don't know who you're talking about right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, he. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that one because that's still.
Yeah, but Johnny Loizaga, it was great to see him get into form. He was the guy who you felt with, was our stopper in the postseason, and I felt good about Clay too. Clay seems to have a really good mindset. I think he was more psyched out of it than anything. A little earlier in the year, to come into postseason situations, man, Clay's sinker plays.
Yeah.
And to get those big double play balls. Now, if the Yankees are going to have that philosophy, which they do, like if anyone's unaware, the Yankees put their relief pitchers into more runners on base situations, middle of the innings than any team in baseball. The Astros are at the polar end of that, the other side, where most of their relievers get clean innings. So if the Yankees are going to lean into that philosophy of giving dirty innings, that's where Clay Holmes comes of value. A strikeout, double play grounder guy is how you prevent runs in the postseason. And I wanted him a lot. They brought in Clark in situations where I thought they could have used Clay Holmes. I don't think he was actually really dealing with that many injuries, Clay. I think they were phantom IL stints by all accounts. So managing him with that kind of kick gloves. And I get that, mental health and mental injuries are a legitimate part of your performance. So maybe it was literally Clay's mental health that they were trying to preserve because he had been struggling with confidence.
It's like preventing the yips almost. Like they can kind of see it coming, and I think they caught it early enough to where they did, to their credit, prevent it a little bit. But at the same time, you have to still instill the confidence in him that you can go to him in those bigger situations where he was successful earlier on in the year.
Yeah. It was tough, man. It was a really tough 4-game set.
And also,
we built up a lot about this.
I want to say also with
the
press conference that they had yesterday, I think that the beat reporters did not do a sufficient job in grilling both Boone and Cashman about decisions made in the ALCS, about pitching changes and things like that. It seemed like they were kind of walking on eggshells to avoid that conversation.
It was really weird.
Yeah.
We just had this whole conversation about the ALCS, right? All the quotes from Boone and Cash, we're talking about trades and contract and stuff. And we kind of integrated that into the episode. But about the management, I don't know. You think of the people who ask those questions in the room that they didn't do it. I mean, Meredith sometimes gets on it. Meredith wasn't asking any questions from what I heard. I know Sweeney Murdy was all over him. He was the one who was actually giving Cash some sass back.
I liked that a lot. Sweeney definitely pulled the most punches, or didn't pull the most punches out of anyone. He was going after Cashman and applying a little bit of pressure, which I think was necessary to get a rise and just show that he had some emotion about this season. At least at minimum, you get that kind of silver lining. But at the same time, it's you have so many opportunities right there. You're in the room with them, and there are a lot of question marks that the fan base has not received proper answers to. And now that those games are no longer fresh, you could have gotten even more out of them, and for whatever reason, failed to do that. So that was just really irritating to me.
Yeah, I wonder who was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Hoke was covering the World Series in Philly. I imagine he was. Yeah. Hoke was there, but Philly's close. I imagine he went back to New York for that press conference. I mean, he's on the Yankees beat.
Yeah.
But I think he works for MLB.com. I know Lindsay Adler is off the beat now.
Yeah, she left. She's working.
Which I love Lindsay Adler's articles. Yeah. I'm gonna miss her.
I also just didn't like how when Boone was asked about how if he ever felt like he was afraid of getting fired or anything like that, he said not at all. So it's just it sounded like he had perpetual job immunity or job stability, no matter what happened. That should have never been the case. Truthfully, he should have been kind of shitting his pants when they started to falter in that crazy stretch, because they were on pace to be the greatest team ever, and they ended up having a disappointing season at the end of the day. So
yeah, I work my job. I'm a process improvement engineer. The amount of times in a day that I hear the word process is overwhelming. And Cashman upset me yesterday with how often he was saying process. And in terms of a performance improvement mindset, I understand judging things based on process and not always results, right? The unfortunate part is in baseball, it's a results driven game. You're in the business of results, and we're seeing that the process, even if the process is sound, like they're talking about their staff getting recruited elsewhere, like we know the Yankees
Mhm.
analytics team are good at data analytics, right? Or at least in accruing data, getting data that's useful. But we're seeing that this process is not conducive to being the best team. Like it's not like the Yankees at any point. The Yankees in '09 were start to finish the best team. I think in 2010 and 2011, the Yankees were probably the best team in baseball that fell short in playoff situations. Like it was close. The Yankees and since then, I mean, I can't even say Boone's tenure. It was also the end of Girardi. Have not been the best team in baseball like any season. Like even when they
Yeah.
had the 100-win season, like the Astros have been
And
better,
in
the
2017,
Dodgers have been better.
yeah.
And to not look at your process and be like, there's something awry with our process, with how we do things. Like
Mhm.
it's really frustrating. Like you're
It's
doing the same
negligence.
thing and
It's fucking
expecting a different
negligence,
result.
and it's overlooking your blind spots. I mean, at least in 2017, you could say with Girardi, like maybe I don't know, he could have deserved to be fired, but at the same time, he brought a team that wasn't supposed to perform that well all the way to Game 7 against the cheating Astros team and got fired. Meanwhile, Boone
Yep.
has lost it how many years in a row now, and underperformed with a supposedly like stacked roster, and he has all the job security in the world. Like things like that just don't make sense to me. I'm not saying that Girardi didn't deserve to be fired, but I'm also saying that like Aaron Boone like deserves to have his job security questioned just as much because of this process that is severely flawed.
And it's exactly. And like it's a bit condescending even to have this mindset. Like I don't even necessarily blame Boone because I don't think a
No,
lot of his decisions are his decisions. And I know he's gone on at nauseum on the K show about like the structure, how he makes the final decision, and I agree. And I think, I mentioned that before. We saw that when he took IKF out of the lineup in the CS. Like he was when he was playing Peraza because he was like, I'm done. Like he can't make these errors. Um, so if you're going to, and Sweeney asked this yesterday, there's Sweeney asking the only good questions, what accountability does the
yeah,
decision making team, the analytics team have, right? And Cashman brushed it off. He said they're good at what they do. I'm going to judge them on process and
that's
not
not how
results.
you
Well,
fucking win games.
that's
Like that's not how you. Yeah.
it's baseball. Like I understand. I work in healthcare. I understand that they're like different things. Like humans are human, right? Like there's things that get awry where the process can be put in shape and you can get a variation of results. You can get unlucky.
No.
The Yankees didn't get unlucky this year. They didn't get unlucky. They had injuries. That happens every time. So like you build depth and you have your management. Like we look at two of the worst bullpens in going into a World Series the last few years. The Braves, the bullpen was not a positive for them going into last postseason. They won the World Series. They became great. And the Phillies, their bullpen has been great because Rob Thompson is putting their pitchers in
Yep.
situations to win. And they've been gamers.
Speaking
They've been
Ranger
great. They've gone out
Suarez,
and
how
got
good
it.
he's been.
But like, yeah, and it's because they have a plan. You can tell, but you can
No,
also tell they're not sticking to their plan like
they're able to make
by the T.
on the fly adjustments that the Yankees failed. It almost felt like it's like my way or the highway. Like we're sticking out, we're dying on this hill. It's like that doesn't work a lot of the time,
Yeah.
especially when you already have a systematically flawed ideology that's like leading the way for you.
Yeah. It's tough, man. It was a really bad attitude at the presser. I mean, I don't think there's a, a caller on the K show, or someone tweeted to the K show because Michael gets in and he, he grills the Yankees, and they always kick off the episode whenever there's or the radio
Yeah.
show, whatever. Whenever there's a presser like this, but Peter, who's not a baseball guy, he said basically, when the Yankees lose, we're gonna react like this, right? So Peter was like, what could they have said that would have made Yankees fans happy? Like, are they
Yeah.
mad at the presser? Or are they mad at the season? And just taking it out on the presser. And a really smart guy on Twitter, that's an oxymoron, tweeted into the K Show, and he was like, some level of accountability of the that their process is flawed. They have faith in what they've done, but it seems like they dance. They're like convinced they're doing things right, and their players are underperforming or they're getting unlucky, and it's really like some level of like we're gonna reevaluate how we do things, how we make roster decisions, how we make lineup decisions, and bullpen management. And there was no accountability of that, and I think that's what Yankees
Yeah,
fans
no,
wanted,
absolutely.
and it's not
Just
what we got.
some kind of being like, hey, we fucked up. This is like what we're going to do to change. Don't have to get too
Yeah.
specific with it, but like the fans just want to see some kind of optimism where they feel like they can make strides to improve rather than just saying everything is fine and like the way that it is, nothing's broken. When clearly things are broken.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'll tell you this. This is sorry. Oh. And like going through work, we always talk about this. How we have a process first mindset, not a person first mindset. We can talk about Cash and Boone, and I guess it would change if Cash were to change. But no, we
Yeah.
can talk about firing Boone. If we fire Boone and keep Cashman, like it's if the Yankees process, if they're confident in it and the decision making angle is the same, you can put different people in there with different philosophies. I think Buck Showalter is the Yankees manager. I don't think he would take.
No.
I don't think he would take the job in the current structure.
Mhm.
But if he was, I don't think it would be much different. The results, like it's not, and I don't want to diminish just Boone's impact. But you talk to players, like the manager doesn't do a ton, and especially the way that the Yankees empower the manager to do things.
Yeah.
I think Boone has more power than like Dave Roberts does. But if you're gonna change, if we're gonna change the manager, we're gonna change the hitting coaches and stuff. If the cogs are gonna run the same way underneath, it doesn't matter
Sure.
what the frame of the car looks like, So it has to be an organizational shift, which we're far from. So it's either we invest in players that are more consistent, and we get deeper, and we just put together that salary to make this thing better, make it good enough, or a big change. I don't think that big change is coming as long as Cashman's at the helm. And not that that's a good or a bad thing, but there's no accountability or no.
I just
No
don't see them
change
ever
incoming.
going for the full rebuild with this current regime. And I think that Howell is just very, very complacent and completely fine with the way that things look right now, which is one of the reasons they're in this predicament right now. It's just, yeah, it doesn't leave the fans with much speculation in the sense that there are so many options that, like, ways the Yankees will realistically go with their decisions this offseason. You know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah.
plenty of common sense things that the Yankees can change right now that make sense to the fans, but the like reality of the situation is the Yankees themselves don't see those as issues. So, I mean, I just hope that they actually shell out the money for the proper free agents beyond just Judge. So, like, you
Yep.
can't just re-sign Judge, re-sign Rizzo, and call it a postseason or call it an offseason. You have to make more moves on top of that to build a well-rounded roster.
Yeah, and I think that's our cue because I think next time we're going to go through a free agency preview and we'll talk about our roster for next year. But that's our feelings, man. That's the pulse of the team right now. That's how fans are feeling. It was a tough season. It was fun. I got out to a lot of games this year. Jake and I are going to keep going to games as long as they keep winning. So look for some stuff with us going to games there. Really appreciate you sticking around for this long episode. But yeah, hope you enjoy. Tell your friends, bring us back. Jake, you got any closing comments?
Yeah, thanks for listening, man. This is a fun time. Just felt good to like air out a lot of the the grievances that we've had and actually say it out loud, to not just, I mean, Liam and I have talked about this stuff for a minute. We angrily text each other on a daily basis at this point. So, and I'm sure with the postseason wrapping up, we'll have even more discussion to be had. But yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and we'll bring you some fun stuff. We'll do some, we'll do some activities, some games and stuff to get us thinking about where the Yankees are going next. That's our 2022 recap episode, but that's in our rearview mirror, right? So we're gonna put that behind us. It's on to next year. It's on to our roster building. It's on putting together that chase for 28 for next year, and we're all in on the 2023 season, man. So, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon.